The rifle heist at Sunset Ranch. I pulled my weathered pickup truck onto the familiar dirt road leading to Sunset Ranch 3 days earlier than planned. A weekend deer hunting trip near the Texas border had been cut short by a dust storm that turned the air into a gritty haze. All I wanted was a hot cup of coffee, the quiet of my land, and maybe a moment to shake the trail dust from my beard. The scent of mesquite and oak clung to my jacket as I stopped at the wooden gate. I brushed the dust off the small cross my father had nailed there decades ago, a silent nod to the man who'd taught me this land wasn't just dirt, it was legacy. But as I turned toward the ranch house, a chill hit me. Something was wrong. The cattle weren't lowing. The horses weren't stirring. Just an eerie stillness that made my neck prickle. Little did I know, I was about to walk into a scheme that would test everything my father taught me about protecting what's ours. The first red flag was the kitchen door. The wood around the lock was splintered, as if someone had pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, nothing seemed missing, but the motion sensor light by the barntist before I left was dead. Then I saw her, Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, strutting around my horse stable in a neon green tracksuit, snapping photos like she was on a mission. She didn't bother with a hello, just smirked and said, "Oh, Tom, you're back early. Thought you were off hunting. You should check your locks, lots of shady folks around lately." Her voice dripped with fake concern, but her eyes screamed calculation. My father's words echoed, "Be polite, but firm." I forced a smile. "Thanks for the tip, Karen. I've got this place covered. My dad taught me how to handle trouble." She lingered, circling my yard like a vulture, peering toward my office where I kept the gun safe. That night, I installed hidden cameras around the safe and back door. Dad was a military man before he was a rancher, and he'd always said, "Know your enemy's plan before they know you know." Dawn broke, and with it, a scene that made my blood freeze. Karen stood in my yard, dressed in a camouflage jacket plastered with homemade badges, HOA commander, property chief like some wannabe general. 3 strangers in hunting gear hovered around a tarp, inspecting my rifles, including the Winchester my father gave me at 16. That gun wasn't just steel and wood. It carried 3 generations of our family's sweat and pride. Karen was pitching them like a used car salesman, claiming I'd abandoned the ranch due to debts and that she, as HOA rep, was liquidating assets to cover unpaid fees. One buyer, a guy with a gray mustache, hefted my father's Winchester. "Poor fella," he said. "Must have been desperate to leave these behind." The lie stung worse than the theft. This wasn't just robbery, it was an attack on my name. Rage burned through me, but I held it together. I stormed out, boots pounding the dirt. "This is my ranch. Those are my rifles, and that woman's a thief." The buyers froze, realizing they'd stumbled into a crime scene. Karen's eyes flickered with panic, but she recovered fast, dialing 911 with theatrical flair. "Help! A dangerous trespasser is threatening me and my clients," she shrieked, her voice Oscar-worthy. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app, and started recording. "You want to show, Karen? Let's see how it plays when everyone sees you breaking in." The buyers backed off, one carefully setting the Winchester down. Sirens wailed in the distance. I knew this was just the start. Officer Sarah Jenkins arrived, dust swirling around her patrol car. Karen launched into her victim act, but my cameras had caught everything. Her pre-dawn break-in, her handling the rifles, her sales pitch. The rifles were taken as evidence, leaving my safe empty, a wound that cut deeper than I expected. Karen, undeterred, escalated her game. Letters and emails poured in from the HOA, each dripping with legal jargon, demanding I sign papers to resolve the issue. One even included a forged text, supposedly from me, agreeing to sell the rifles. The forgery was laughable, pasted together like a kid's craft project, but it showed Karen had been studying me, plotting for months. I wasn't just fighting a thief, I was up against a predator. I called Laura Hayes, a lawyer known for dismantling rogue HOAs. When I laid out the story, she chuckled. "This is the juiciest case of HOA abuse I've seen. Let's make her bury herself." We crafted a trap, a fake email from me, agreeing to sell the rifles, embedded with a Kodia horseshoe symbol and the number 47, a nod to my father's military days. If Karen altered it, the code would unravel, proving tampering. I sent it, and Karen bit, forwarding it to HOA members, county officials, and local businesses, crowing, Tom Harper's done. He thought he could defy me, but I'm in charge. Every forward was another nail in her coffin. The HOA meeting was our stage. Laura and I arrived early, setting up cameras and a projector. I tipped off Jack Thornton, a respected rancher, to ensure a crowd. Word spread, and the community house filled with faces I hadn't seen in years. Karen strutted in, suited up like a CEO, her briefcase swinging. She launched into a slideshow, boasting about securing dangerous weapons from my ranch, complete with photos of my rifles on her tarp. The audacity was breathtaking. She was spinning her crime as a public service. I hit play on the projector. The room fell silent as my camera footage rolled. Karen breaking in, stealing the rifles, setting up her sale. Her 911 call followed, her lies exposed in crystal-clear audio. Her face drained of color, her smugness crumbling. The crowd erupted. Ranchers stood, one by one, sharing stories of Karen's tyranny, fines for unapproved garden colors, penalties for roosters crowing too early, demands to tear down family heirlooms. Ellen Carter, hands trembling, said, "She made me rip out my grandmother's rose garden because the petals were too red." The room buzzed with anger, but also relief. People were finally free to speak. Karen screamed about conspiracies and lunged for the projector, but Laura blocked her, cool as steel. "Afraid of the truth, Mrs. Mitchell?" she asked. I piled on, showing bank records of Karen's embezzlement $60,000 in HOA funds spent on her mansion's granite countertops and swimming pool. The evidence was undeniable. The vote to oust Karen was unanimous. As the cheers died down, police cars rolled up. Officer Jenkins, flanked by a prosecutor named Diane Brooks, entered with a thick file. Brooks read the charges: grand theft, embezzlement, fraud, racketeering. The room gasped at the scope. Karen had been fleecing us for years. I handed Brooks a final envelope, receipts tying Karen's luxury renovations to HOA funds. Her eyes widened. "This seals it," she said. "She's looking at serious time." Karen, handcuffed and sobbing, was led away, her empire in ruins. The crowd watched in silence, a mix of justice and solemnity. 3 weeks later, Sunset Ranch was reborn. The HOA held elections, and Jack Thornton became president, vowing transparency. Laura was hired to overhaul the rules. Neighbors, once divided, now shared coffee and rebuilt fences. I hosted a barbecue, the air thick with laughter and mesquite smoke. Jack gifted me a carved ammo box, a symbol of respect. Kids drew Scare Karen cartoons, one showing her clutching fake papers with the caption, "She can't hurt us now." We unveiled a giant Karen hat, a 4-foot satire of her arrogance, planted in my yard as a local legend. In my office, I opened the gun safe. My rifles were back, the Winchester gleaming. I thought of Dad, his voice clear. "Never let anyone steal what you've earned." I'd be honored by that. Karen's screams hadn't shaken me, and her lies hadn't won. In Texas, truth speaks loudest. What do you think? Have you faced injustice or abuse of power in your life? Should we always fight back, or is there a time to walk away? Share your thoughts below. I want to hear your stand on standing up to bullies and righting wrongs.